In this video, I want to talk about something called a theme framework for WordPress. This is one called Thematic, and I'll talk about a couple of others later, but what is a theme framework exactly? Well, I like to think of them as parent themes on steroids. Parent themes with a lot of options in them. And in particular, frameworks are meant to be parent themes. Of course, you can take any theme and make it a parent simply by creating a child theme of it. However, these are meant to be parents from the beginning. They're not meant to stand on their own as themes. Now, typically a framework will include multiple layout options using CSS files. So you choose which one you're going to use, 3-column, 2-column, left, right, so forth. They often include a lot of widgetized areas. Not necessarily to use all of them. Again, it's not meant to be a theme in itself. It's meant to say, here's 12 different widgetized areas you could use in your child theme. Often they come with a large variety of page templates. So they've already created them for you. You pick and choose between them. They very often have a lot of built-in hooks. Now, we haven't talked about hooks, and we will during the advanced theme discussion, but basically these are places where you can inject some code. So for example, let's say you want to put in something between the header area and the main content area. Well, you could go and create a new template file for that. Or, if there's a hook built into that area, you can simply inject your code in there using the hook. You don't have to create a whole new template file. So there's a lot of power to these hooks. There are some built into WordPress, but a framework will often have many of its own hooks. And similarly, WordPress generates classes, as we've seen, its own CSS classes to target individual items of content. Very often a framework will create its own built-in CSS classes. Now, why use a theme framework? Well, often they're better thought out than a regular theme in terms of the details, the structure, the semantics, and all of these sorts of things. The coding, often much better thought out. Now, there's always going to be customization needed, of course, but frameworks are meant to make that customization easier. Typically, a theme that isn't meant to be a framework, meant to be a parent, does things its own way, and it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. Frameworks are meant to do that. Very often frameworks will have a larger community of support than a regular theme will. I mean, unless it's a really widely used theme, a framework is already meant to be used by multiple people using child themes, so you have a lot of community of support. The number one reason, though, to use a theme framework is consistency. It gives you, as a designer, a consistent base from which to work. This isn't very important to someone who's just using WordPress once. That's not a particularly useful feature for them. But for you as a designer who's going to be doing WordPress sites over and over and over again, a consistent base is very, very important. It speeds up your development time tremendously. Some things to consider when you're looking at a theme framework. You need to take it apart, really look at it, and you'll probably have to get into WordPress a lot more before you can really do this and understand what you need. You have to look at this framework from the standpoint of, can I work with this? Remember, a framework is like another layer of constraint for you. If you're not comfortable with that, of course, you're going to constantly be at odds with the framework, so you want to be comfortable from the beginning. Always remember, frameworks may help out with layout to some extent, but design is ultimately going to be design. So if a framework is really pushing a particular design or design style, don't get into that. You want the framework to simply be a place on which to hang your design. So layout, again, might be helpful in a framework, but it's ultimately design that you're going to be doing. Make sure the framework is of high quality. We've talked about flexibility. Make sure that it's well thought out in all ways, including well thought out coding, efficient coding, that it meets all the web standards, of course, both HTML and in CSS, and make sure that it's not causing any security problems with WordPress and so forth. So there's a lot to consider there. Now, one of the things when you're considering a framework is maybe you end up creating your own framework, so to speak. And really, I've done this myself where I've created a parent theme that I keep reusing. So then when I come to a particular client, I know exactly what I've got in my parent theme. I know what I need to do to modify it in the child theme to create what this particular client needs. Then the next client, I continue to use the same parent theme, again to give me that consistency, give me a fast starting point for creating a new theme as a child. So those are some examples of why frameworks can be useful for you. Let's take a quick look at a couple. I already briefly showed you Thematic, which was one of the earliest of the WordPress theme frameworks. Now this is a framework called Hybrid, and what's interesting here is that its developer, Justin Tadlock, has really made it clear, I think, by calling it a core, that a framework isn't meant to be a theme in and of itself. It's meant to be a starting point on which you build child themes. And so I guess this naming is a little closer to what I think of as a framework. It's a core. Just like WordPress has core files, then you add plugins and do other things to it. This is a core theme in that sense, and then you create child themes on top of it. Both this and Thematic, by the way, are free. They're both completely free open source frameworks that you can work with. There are premium ones that you can buy, but I'll tell you, these two right here, and there are others, these two right here will pretty much do everything you need to begin with. Again, it's all about customization anyway, so what you want is a good, solid, clean framework on which to work, and these are two excellent ones for that. So that's a look at frameworks, and I think you'll see that as a designer, a framework, or a deliberate parent theme, as it were, a consistent parent theme for you, is going to be a very powerful idea for your business.